I want you to picture a scene. It's one we're all pretty familiar with, maybe even comfortable with.
Right.
Imagine a huge stadium, or maybe just a really packed church. The lights are down, the music is swelling, you know the moment. The speaker's just giving this powerful message, and they ask for a response.
It's the big climax of the event.
Exactly. And hundreds of hands go up. People might be flooding the aisles. I mean, it looks like an absolute victory. If you were making a documentary on the success of the church, this is the clip you'd use.
For sure. It feels like winning.
It does. But the source material we're diving into today, it's a document called From Converts to Disciples. It kind of throws a huge bucket of ice water on that exact moment.
It really does. It asks a question that is, frankly, a bit of a buzzkill right then. It asks, so what happens Monday morning?
Or 6 months from now. Yeah.
Right.
Because the central argument of this text is that we're staring down what it calls a quiet crisis. We've become masters at generating decisions, getting that hand raised, but we are failing and failing badly at producing resilience.
That is the core tension. The text argues that modern ministry has made a fatal category error. We've mistaken conversion for completion.
We treat the starting line like it's the finish line.
We do. And the result isn't just, a few people falling through the cracks. It's a systemic failure where we're producing converts by the thousands, but disciples, people who actually look and act like Jesus, they're becoming an endangered species.
And just to set the stage for you listening, this isn't just a rant. This deep dive is based on a real structural analysis of how churches are operating. This document, it's both a critique and, in a way, a manual for fixing it.
It's proposing a shift from what it calls program-based Christianity to life-on-life apprenticeship.
Which sounds great as a buzzword, life on life. But as we get into this, you'll see it's a really demanding shift.
It is. It means completely rethinking what we even count as success.
Well, let's start right there. The problem with metrics. If you ask an average church leader how things are going, they pull up a spreadsheet. What are they looking at?
Usually they're looking at the ABCs, attendance, buildings, and cash.
Right.
And the source argues that these are metrics of the crowd, not the core. When your success is defined by the size of the gathering or the emotional spike of an altar call, you accidentally create a culture of spiritual adolescence.
Spiritual adolescence. That's a pretty biting phrase.
It is, but it fits. You end up with a room full of people who are technically saved. They've made the decision. They have their fire insurance, so to speak, but they're stagnant.
They're not self-feeders.
No. They consume religious content, but they don't produce spiritual fruit.
Yeah.
They're, 40 years old in the natural, but maybe 13 years old in the spirit.
And the author traces this all the way back to how we misunderstand our own source code, the Great Commission. Now, I know most of us have heard Matthew 28, go therefore and make disciples, baptizing them, teaching them. It sounds like a list.
Sure. Task 1, go. Task 2, baptize. Task 3, teach. That's how we usually hear it.
But the text takes us into the Greek grammar here. And usually when people bring up Greek grammar, I'll be honest, my eyes kind of glaze over.
Right. You check out.
Totally. But this is one of those moments where the technical detail, it changes the whole strategy.
It really does. The source points out that in the original text, there's only one imperative verb, one command.
Just one.
And that verb is methodisisate, which translates to make disciples.
Okay, so if make disciples is the only actual command, what are all the other words doing?
They're participles. They just modify the main verb. They describe how you do the main action.
Yeah.
So a better, more accurate way to read it might be, in your going, make disciples by baptizing them and by teaching them.
Wow. That is a massive shift in focus.
That's huge.
It means going isn't the main goal. And that conversion moment, the baptizing, that isn't the goal either.
Exactly. Evangelism is just the on-ramp. It's the entry point. But we've built entire ministries where the on-ramp is treated as the destination.
We get them on the highway, give them a high five, and then just leave them stranded on the shoulder.
Pretty much. The real destination, grammatically and theologically, is a learner. That's what a disciple is.
The source actually defines these terms because we tend to use them all interchangeably. Christian, believer, disciple.
Right, like they're all the same thing. But the source says they're distinct stages. A convert is someone who has turned, changed direction. That's vital. We're not minimizing that.
Of course.
But a disciple is defined as an apprentice, someone who orders their whole life around the teacher.
Orders their life. That's the friction, isn't it? You can be a convert without changing your schedule. You can't be a disciple without changing your schedule.
You can't. You can't be an apprentice carpenter and never show up to the wood shop. And then there's a third category, the disciple maker. This is someone who participates in the mission by forming others.
So the crisis isn't a lack of converts.
No, we have plenty of converts.
Yeah.
The crisis is we have very few disciples and almost zero disciple makers. We've broken the chain of reproduction.
Which leads to this concept that I found fascinating. Spiritual inflation. It's a great economic analogy.
Yeah, in an economy, inflation is when there's too much money chasing too few goods, so the money loses value.
So how does that apply here?
It's the idea that knowledge without obedience puffs you up. It creates a false sense of spiritual wealth. I mean, think about it. In the information age, we have access to more sermons, podcasts, more theology than any generation in history.
Oh, for sure. You can listen to the best teachers on your commute, read brilliant authors before bed.
Exactly. You can have the perfect theological vocabulary. But the source argues that if you're not actually doing what the text says, you are spiritually inflated. You look big, but there's no substance. It's just hot air.
It's the fat head, small hands problem.
It's a very visual way to put it, yes.
Yeah.
The source calls this a dangerous divorce between justification and sanctification.
Okay, let's get theological for a second.
Justification is your standing before God. You're forgiven. That's the convert moment. Sanctification is the process of being transformed into the likeness of Christ.
Right.
That's the disciple journey.
And the argument is we've unbundled them, like a cable package.
We've sold a truncated gospel. We tell people, come get justification. It's free, it's instant, it secures your eternity. But we treat sanctification like it's an optional add-on.
Like the premium package. Oh, you want to actually change. That'll cost you extra.
Right. But the text argues you can't actually have one without the other. The key verse cited is Luke 6.46. Jesus asks this just haunting question. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say?
It's a logic puzzle, really. If he is Lord, then obedience isn't optional.
And if you're not obeying, is he really your Lord?
Now, I can hear the objection forming in someone's mind right now, because when we talk about obedience, the legalism alarm bells start going off.
For sure. Do this, do that, or you aren't a real Christian.
Right. So how does the source navigate that line between earning it and living it?
That is the most critical distinction.
Yeah.
The source is adamant. Obedience is not the root of salvation. It is the fruit. There's a principle mentioned. Identity precedes activity.
Identity precedes activity. Let's unpack that.
It just means you don't obey to become a child of God. You will fail because you already are one.
Okay.
Think of it like this. If I tell you I'm a professional swimmer, but you never ever see me get in the pool, you'd start to question my identity.
Right. The swimming doesn't make you a swimmer. It reveals that you are one.
Exactly. It's a reflex. It's the natural response to who you are.
Right.
The source says when we separate knowledge from obedience, we aren't protecting grace. We're cheapening it.
We're creating a version of Christianity that doesn't actually require the Christian to change.
Precisely.
So if the classroom model, just feeding people more information, doesn't work, what does? The source pivots here to methodology, and it points to a very ancient model.
It points to the Jewish model of apprenticeship. If you look at Jesus, he didn't set up a university. He didn't rent a lecture hall and hold classes from 9 to 5. He chose 12 guys and said, follow me.
Proximity.
That's the whole game. Mark 3.12 is the anchor. He appointed 12 that they might be with him.
That comes first.
It's the prerequisite. Before they preached, before they did anything else, they had to just be with him. They watched how he prayed, how he handled interruptions. You can't learn a lifestyle from a distance. It has to be life on life.
It's the difference between reading a textbook on carpentry and spending 3 years in a workshop with a master. One gives you theory.
The other gives you muscle memory. And the goal of this apprenticeship isn't just self-improvement. This is where the strategy gets really sharp. The source focuses on entrustment.
Which we see in 2 Timothy 2.2. The author calls this the most strategic verse on discipleship in the entire Bible.
I think so.
Yeah.
Let's break it down, because there's a chain reaction in there most people miss. Paul writes to Timothy, "What you have heard from me, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." If you look closely, you can see 4 generations in that one sentence.
Okay, let's count them. Generation 1 is Paul.
Generation 2 is Timothy. Generation 3 is the faithful man.
And Generation 4 is others.
So Paul isn't just teaching Timothy. He's teaching Timothy how to teach the next guy.
That's the ripple effect. And that is where the modern church usually fails.
Completely. We're great at Paul teaching Timothy. We have great preachers teaching great congregations. But does Timothy know how to teach the faithful men?
Usually, no.
Timothy becomes a dead end. a reservoir that just collects water instead of a river that channels it.
And if the water stops with you, it eventually goes stagnant.
And the mission fails. If that chain breaks, there's no generation 3 or 4. The exponential growth just stocks.
Okay, so we buy the theory. Apprenticeship, not just classes. But how do you actually do this? It feels intimidating.
Right, but the source doesn't leave us with just philosophy. It outlines a discipleship pathway. It's a suggested 12-week structure. And the order of the phases is everything.
Everything. Okay.
Phase 1 is gospel foundations. This goes back to identity. Before you ask a disciple to do anything, you ground them in their union with Christ.
That seems really intentional. If you start with do this, you just get moralism.
You do.
Yeah.
You have to secure the foundation of who you are. If they don't know they're loved and secure, any command just sounds like a threat. Then comes phase 2, formative practices.
This is where the habits come in.
Yes, installing the operating system, head, heart, and hands. Not just reading scripture for info, but letting it shape your whole worldview. Learning to pray is communion, not a grocery list.
Okay, so identity, then habits. Then phase 3 is missional living.
This is where the faith moves outward. Service, stewardship, witness. But notice, it comes after identity and habits.
You can't give what you don't have.
You can't. If you send someone out on mission before they're formed, they burn out. They have no depth to draw from.
And finally, phase 4.
Reproduction. This is where you close the loop. The disciple becomes the mentor. The pathway isn't finished until the person walking it is ready to turn around and walk someone else through it.
The source also says for this to work, the church needs to be an ecosystem, not just a venue.
Yes. It needs to be an environment. Think of it like soil. The church provides the word, the sacraments, the community, the rich soil that supports this individual growth. But, and here's the kicker, and maybe the most countercultural point, the best way to do this isn't through complex programs.
This was the section on simplicity over sophistication. And I think we all have a tendency to over-engineer things. We think it needs a 300-page workbook and a video series.
And a certification process, yeah. And the source argues that complex programs actually kill reproduction.
Why is that?
Because ordinary people look at them and say, I can't lead that. I'm not a theologian. I'm just a mom or a mechanic.
So complexity is intimidating.
Totally. If discipleship requires a PhD, Mrs. Jones in the third pew isn't going to do it. And if she doesn't do it, the mission fails. It has to be simple enough to be transferable, something you can do at a coffee shop.
This leads to the power of one, the idea that we need to stop trying to influence a crowd and start trying to influence one person, intentionally.
It feels counterintuitive, doesn't it? If we want to reach the world, shouldn't we go for the biggest audience possible?
Yeah, it feels like bad math, 1 versus 1,000.
But it's the difference between addition and multiplication. If you add 1,000 people a year to a church, that's linear growth. It's great.
Yeah.
But if you disciple one person a year, and they disciple one, and those two disciple two more, the exponential curve eventually overtakes the linear one.
It takes longer to start, but the ceiling is infinitely higher, and the quality of the person is entirely different.
Completely. You're building deep roots, not just wide branches.
So if I'm listening and I'm motivated, I want to find my one, how do I choose? The source gives some criteria. We're not looking for the most charismatic person in the room.
No, and that's a trap leaders fall into. We look for talent. The source says look for two things: faithfulness and teachability.
Faithfulness and teachability.
We waste so much time chasing people with high potential who aren't teachable. They think they know it all, while ignoring the quiet, faithful person who is just hungry to learn. Invest in the hungry.
Once you find them, the relationship is described using this parenting analogy, spiritual parenthood.
And that changes the timeline. Parenting is a long game. You don't raise a child in a weekend seminar.
No.
You raise them over years. It takes patience, love, correction, and a view toward legacy. You're always asking, who will be there when I'm gone?
It circles right back to that 10 Timothy chain. Paul parenting Timothy, so Timothy can parent the faithful men.
It creates a family tree of faith, and that redefines success. Success isn't how many people came to my group. It's, is the person I'm pouring into capable of pouring into someone else? If the answer is no, I haven't finished the job.
As we get toward the end here, the source brings up a term that really stuck with me: holy discontent.
It's a powerful phrase. It's not about being grumpy or cynical about the church. It's about looking at the gap between what Jesus commanded, make disciples, and what we're actually producing, consumers, and just letting that gap break your heart a little bit.
It's a constructive dissatisfaction, realizing we've been settling for less.
Exactly. It's asking, Are we content with counting raised hands, or do we want to see lives reshaped? The source warns that the empty hands of the non-reproducing disciple are a tragedy.
That image of empty hands it's haunting. It suggests that if you've been walking with Jesus for years, receiving his grace, but you haven't helped anyone else walk with him, you're missing a massive part of your own purpose.
You're holding the cure and refusing to share it. The New Testament knows nothing of a disciple who isn't also, in some way, moving toward being a disciple maker.
So to pull this all together, we started with this quiet crisis. We're great at recruitment, but we're struggling with resilience. We looked at the grammar of the Great Commission and saw the main verb is make disciples, not just get decisions.
We unpacked the danger of spiritual inflation knowing without doing. And we identified the solution. Life-on-life apprenticeship, modeled by Jesus, passed down through entrustment.
We walked through that practical pathway. Identity first, then habits, then mission, then reproduction. And finally, the strategy of simplicity focusing on one person, being a spiritual parent, and trusting that exponential math.
It's really a call to move from a program-based religion to a relational apprenticeship. It's slower. It's messier. You can't put it on a spreadsheet as easily. But it's the only thing that actually changes the world.
So here's the final thought for you to chew on this week. The source material talks about the power of one. It is so easy to look at the state of things and just feel overwhelmed. But this text liberates you from having to fix the whole machine.
You just have to look for that one faithful, teachable person in your orbit.
And ask yourself, am I willing to open my life to them? Not just a coffee meeting once a month, but real proximity.
Because that's where the miracle of reproduction happens.
The question isn't, can you save the world? The question is, who is your Timothy? Or your Priscilla? If the chain of discipleship stretches back 2,000 years to Jesus himself, who is the next link attached to you? That's the challenge. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.